Doctors, are your patients quietly quitting you? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast, brought to you by CATS Consultants and Chiro Health USA. I'm Dr. Michael Perusich, your host for the podcast today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Troy Fox. Troy, sometimes, and it's crazy, I know it sounds nuts, but sometimes our patients quietly quit us and just walk away. Let's talk about why that happens.
Yeah, and we're not talking about the patient that because it happens that sometimes we don't have what that patient needs. Maybe they need to be sent somewhere else. And maybe we're not quick enough to tell them that and they
Right.
quit.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that patient. I'm talking about the patient that got results, that loved what you did, but you're sitting there scratching your head trying to figure out why they canceled their last appointment or just didn't show, and why they didn't accept your phone call when you called to check on them and find out what was going on. And you think they hate you. Now, I've had this happen. We've all had this happen at
All
one
had it
point or
happen.
another. Here's the one that got me. Here's what made me really think about this. A couple months ago, my wife was in Walmart. We don't go to Walmart very often. I've been to Walmart twice in the last year, and that was because I had to buy flowers for my wife for her anniversary. I didn't want to have them deliver it to my doorstep. I wanted to pick them out. So there you go. I needed golf balls. That's really important too. So my wife goes to Walmart and she sees a former patient of ours, and that patient could not wait to talk to her. "Oh my gosh, Bridget, it's so good to see you. I just love your office, blah, blah, blah. I love the doctor. He did such a great job for me. And I've been feeling so good." And then they talk,
So good, I quit coming in.
Bridget didn't push her much farther behind that, but Bridget asked me, how do you think that happened? Where was our breakdown?
Mhm.
And I thought about it. We all go through lulls and highs in our practice. We go through times when we're really doing a great job of educating our patients and talking with them when they're in office, right? This was probably a little bit of a lull. And I
Yep.
identified it. I thought about, I'm really good at remembering what I do with patients.
Mhm.
And I could remember that a lot of times we talked about, "How's your garden? What are the grandkids up to?"
Yeah.
And we really didn't get in much deeper conversation than that.
Yeah, your table
So
talk was off.
my table talk was off. So why don't you talk about that a little bit? Talk about where it starts and then what are the secondary. So in other words, from the first visit, and then how do we move forward from there?
So I'm gonna be trite, and I say that because everybody's heard this before, especially from you and I, but
Mhm.
it starts on the first phone call. So what we have to understand, I'm gonna back up on this just a second. What we have to understand is that patients have an expectation when they come to you. And
Mhm.
how do most patients decide to come to you? It's not just because they're experiencing some kind of spine or joint related pain. It's also because they've asked around. You ever go to a chiropractor? Yeah, I go to the chiropractor. I go see Dr. Fox. Awesome. Yeah, he's great. I go once a month. Boom. That's their expectation
Mhm.
because most patients forget that they started out coming in 3 times a week for the first 2 weeks or whatever it might be. They've forgotten that they started coming in repetitively. And when they tell you people how great Dr. Fox is, they forget that part. So the expectation is, oh, I'll go see Dr. Fox. He's so good. I'll only have to go once a month. And you
Mhm.
turn around and tell them, nope, that's not what we're going to do. So we have to make sure that we're from the very minute they contact our office that we're unraveling that expectation. So in your history and consultation, you need to be talking about that. When you do your evaluation, what are you thinking already from your evaluation? We know when we do our evaluation, what are you thinking the care plan is going to look like? We need to be setting it. More importantly, we need to be understanding what the patient's actual expectation was. Did they come in just to get out of pain? Did they come in thinking they were just going to come in once a month? Did they come in thinking whatever it might be? So our table talk, to get back to that, our table talk, then each visit has to be about resetting that expectation until the patient gets it. Okay. For years, we've called that chiropractic patient education, but it goes beyond just explaining what the subluxation is or how chiropractic works and that kind of thing. It goes back to connecting the patient back to the reality of what their underlying condition is and what that means chiropractically as far as care going forward. Is this a patient that's going to need 2 months of care to get out of pain and back to function, and then maintenance care? Is this a patient that isn't going to require maintenance care? Which I can't imagine who that would be. But so what are we doing on a daily basis to set that expectation for the patient and help them understand why that expectation needs to be there?
And I think you have to throw into this as well. What was the patient's not only expectation, but where did they feel like their condition was? Because they're going to make an assumption at the beginning of this. Did this occur 2 days ago and they've never had this pain before? Did this occur 2 days ago and this has been an ongoing problem they've had
Yeah,
for
good
many
point.
years, but it only appears about once every 6 months to a year? And it's funny, especially when you end up in an arena. And when I say arena, in other words, the area that you're practicing in, if you've practiced around docs that have given a lot of what I would call first aid care or owie care to where
Sorry, sorry
it's
out there.
but
That's
that
what we call it.
it's really been about the pain. Those patients really don't put two and two together and say, you know what, I have a chronic condition. So part of your job during history is to determine, has this occurred before? That's a really important question to
Yeah.
ask. And if they say, no, not really, I have had some low back pain, but it was on the opposite side. Okay, how many times have you had that? Oh, that happens about once every 6 months.
Mhm.
And but it always went away on its own. And so when you're talking to the patient and you're discussing that prior history, that's a really good time to talk about chronicity of condition as well, because I think that's very important for patients to understand that most of what happens to us as adults didn't really happen yesterday, unless you had a car accident. If you have a trauma, sure. When a patient comes in and goes, nope, I haven't had any trauma. I just got out of bed and it just didn't feel good. So there are a lot of factors involved when we start looking at patient care. Their expectation is very important, but also their understanding of their condition becomes very important when you try to set the stage for what you're going to do with that patient.
So I want to dive into this a little bit deeper. We need to take a quick message from our sponsors, but when we come back, I want to dive into a little bit deeper why patients quit us sometimes quietly. And I think we've set that stage.
Mhm.
But doctors, I want you to make sure you come back because this is important because this happens to all of us. And there's a very simple methodology to squelch it almost completely. So quick word from our sponsors. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast, brought to you by CATS Consultants and Chiro Health USA. We're talking today about how and why our patients quietly quit us sometimes. We laid the stage of patients come in with certain expectations and patients come in not really understanding and connecting the dots that, oh, maybe I have a chronic condition that would benefit from a different perspective of care other than just getting rid of pain and so forth. We've brought up this concept of table talk and how important that is. And so, Troy, one of the things that oftentimes happens when patients quit us is we allow them, and I say we allow them because we don't really uncover this. We allow them to get by with thinking that the whole goal of care is just to get out of pain. And
Mhm.
so the minute they're out of pain, and everybody, doctors out there, how long does it typically take us to get a patient out of pain? It's a magic trick, really, with chiropractic
Mhm.
care. Third visit, fifth visit, sixth visit. That doesn't usually take very long to where the patient at least feels the pain is manageable. And if we allow them to have that expectation that we're about pain care, poof, they're gone. And they won't even tell you why they're gone. This is quitting you quietly. This is that whole phenomenon of it.
Yeah, it happens during that initial phase, and we all know that. It happens right now. There are other reasons that patients quit. You may have had a patient that was with you for 5 years that all of a sudden up and quit. There may
Sure.
be a different reason behind that. But when we see those patients that quit shortly after they get out of pain, we somehow missed a step in education, or we weren't continually educating. And
Right.
continually educating means some of those things that we talk about all the way back in the history. And when we're doing the exam with the patient, we never repeat it again.
Yep.
And so those are going to be some of the little caveats. I don't want to give it away yet, But those are going to be some of the little caveats that really make a change in whether patients follow through with care long term and they actually finally get it. And when they get it, guess what they're going to do? They're going to refer friends and family in.
Yep.
And because they understand why they're getting care at that point. So there is an added benefit. Not only do they follow through with care, but they now become a spokesperson for your practice when done correctly.
Yeah. They become a chiropractic evangelist out in the
Mhm.
community for you, and they sing your praises. And you just brought up a great point. I want to pull that out a little bit. A lot happens on day one with the patient, right? Consultation, history, they fill out paperwork. We ask questions, our staff asks questions, patients telling us a whole bunch of information. How often do we ever go back and really look at that information and digest it and bring it into that conversation on a daily basis? When I talk about table talk, this is what I'm talking about, and reminding the patient why they came in. So if all you do is let the patient think that, oh, I came in because I had 5 out of 10 back pain, then guess what? When it's 1 out of 10 back pain, they're gone. They're gone. They will be in control of that. And you may have treated the patient 3 times. You get to a long 3-day weekend. They're feeling great over the weekend. They may or may not call on Monday and cancel all their appointments. But if their expectations been met, regardless of whether they call you, they're not gonna show back up.
And a
Because
lot
we
of
let
times,
Yeah,
I was
go
gonna,
ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of times they've forgotten what you said on day one. I don't know how many
Sure.
times I've taken a family member to an appointment. Let's say an orthopedic surgeon. My dad had to have his knee replaced.
Mhm.
He goes into the orthopedic surgeon. They go through everything. We come out, and the next day I'm talking to him about what needs to happen. He goes, "They never
I
told me that." "Oh yeah, they did, Dad." So sometimes the person that's not in pain and isn't listening to hear, because what they want to hear is, can you get me better? How long is it going to take? And what's it going to cost? Those are the 3 things they care about.
Yeah.
They're not really concerned about much else at that point. So when you tell them all those things, they're hearing part of it. They're hearing the parts that their brain really wants to digest at that point.
Mhm.
Some of it they won't remember 6 hours later. And so once they start feeling better, they've completely forgotten that conversation that you had. That's why you have to reinforce when you're in with a patient on a daily basis. Hey, that's great that your pain level is down to a 2 out of 10. Let's talk again about that example that I gave you. Remember, I told you that you were a 1984 Mustang GT, and that GT had been driven pretty hard because it was a fun car back then. And so it got driven really hard, and it just doesn't operate the way that it did back in 1984. It's a little rough around the edges. Our goal is really to keep that car running long term. And the example that I like to give, and this is a fun one, I always tell people, so here's the deal. You go into the Hertz rent-a-car place, right? And you rent one of those cool Dodge Challengers, and you go out and you just drive the wheels off of it, right? You drive it for 3 days, and when you bring it back, you've jumped some ramps, you have put it up on 2 wheels, you've probably done, and this will age me, a Rockford turnaround. So if you ever watched the Rockford Files back in the day, you did some spins, you did a lot of stuff. You come back in, there's
I
smoke
thought you were gonna
coming
say
out from
Dukes
under
of
the hood.
Hazzard or something.
Yeah, that would have been good too. But you, at that point, have worked that car pretty heavily. Now it still
Mhm.
runs great, man. It comes in firing on all cylinders, but there's a little smoke coming out from under the hood, and
Hope you took out the insurance.
tires are a little bit bald. And you walk in, and the guy says, he looks at you with a big smile. "Hey, did you have a good time in that car?" "Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. I had a blast." You hesitate to tell him what all you did in it, but he can probably tell.
Yeah.
And he looks at you and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you had a great time in that car. Guess what? That's your car for the rest of your life. You get to keep it. You can't ever have another car. That's it." Now, all of a sudden, a little remorse starts to kick in of what you've done to that car. It's like our bodies. When we're younger, we think we're about 8 foot tall and bulletproof. By the time we figure out that we're not, we've done chronic damage to our spines. We've done chronic damage to other joints as well. But we're a little bit beat up and a little bit broken. And there aren't replacement parts for everything. Yes, we can get new knees. We can get new hips. Now we can even get new shoulders. But you notice with the spine, it doesn't quite work as well. We keep trying, but
Mhm.
the outcomes are not great. And patients even know the outcomes are not great. They'll go get a knee, but they're a little scared to have their spine.
Right.
have surgery on it. A lot of people are for very good reason because they know somebody that it didn't go so well or several people. And
Right.
so when we talk about that and we talk about that longevity, you can repeat that conversation in a few short sentences or even one sentence. Hey, remember that 1984 Mustang GT? You pick the car, I don't care. But the 1984 Mustang GT that we talked about, and they go, "Oh, yeah." And I go, "Remember?" So we're not in a sprint, we're in a marathon. We got to try to keep this car functional for the rest of its life.
Yeah.
Or in other words, your body for the rest of your life. And they
Yeah.
go,
You're
"Oh,
stuck
I
with it.
get it." So as you are going through things, you don't have to get deep into the weeds
Mm-mm.
talking about what's inside of a disc or how afferent and efferent nerve impulses work and what the safety pin cycle is. If you want to, great.
Yeah.
But you really don't have to because you know what? As a
Mm.
patient, I understand that analogy once I give you authority. In other words, once you've done that exam and they're agreeing with you that what's going on is going on, and they're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now you can use an analogy to explain here's why we set up care the way that we do. So
Mhm.
it's really easy to revert back to that. Now, there are many other methods that you can use. That's just
Sure.
one that I like.
Just an analogy.
It's an analogy and
Yeah.
it's one that everybody laughs at, but yet they get it. If you can get them laughing, usually they will give agreement at that point that, you know what, you're probably right about that. I have been a little tough on myself.
Sure.
I've driven myself like that Dodge Challenger or that 84 Mustang GT. So those are things that we look at when we work with patients, but you can't just do it once. You can't just tell them
You have to keep
when you're
reminding
first
them.
talking to them. You have to keep reminding them what they are. They're an 84 Mustang GT, and they'll
Yeah.
laugh every time you say it.
And when you get out to maintenance care, you tell them, you know what, that Mustang, it's going to need some gas every once in a while. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks. We'll gas up the engine and keep you
Yep.
running. Well, it's
Yep.
just simple little things like that help flip that switch so patients understand a little bit better about what their needs are.
Hmm.
And far too often we get, and I'll use your term, Troy, we get too deep in the weeds on chiropractic care, on the
Yeah.
chiropractic philosophy, on how chiropractic works. And I'm like you. I think it's great if you want to tell patients all that. Love it. It's fantastic. I love it when patients are deeper educated about what we do. But the reality is they came to see you not because you're going to tell them about chiropractic care. They came to see you because they've heard you have experience in helping them with their problem.
Hmm.
And they came to you for a personal reason, for an
Right.
emotionally personal reason.
Hmm.
And when we can connect that and help them understand on a deeper basis through an analogy, through helping them realize that this isn't a new condition you have that recurs every 6 months. It's the same condition. And over time, it's going to get worse, much like your 1984 Mustang would get if you didn't properly tune it up once in a while. So helping patients make those connections, to connect the dots, to change their expectations is incredibly important. The
Yeah.
reality is, if we don't do that, guess what? You can have all the authority you want. Patients will quit care. They will
Hmm.
quit care, not because they didn't like it, not because
Yeah.
they didn't get results, but because we allowed them to keep their expectations intact, thus allowing them to control care. We're supposed to be in control. We're the doctor.
Mm.
I want to dig into this just a little bit more. We got to take a quick message from our sponsor, so we'll be right back.
In today's economy, every dollar counts. Families are facing tough choices, having to reconsider what was once essential to them. But when it comes to healthcare, no one should have to compromise on their well-being because of financial constraints. That's where Power Health USA steps in, the solution for your practice. We understand the financial pressures families are under, whether they're insured, on Medicare, or paying out of pocket for treatment. By offering discounts on care, you can ensure that your patients can still afford the treatment they need. At Power Health USA, we're committed to making sure no family has to sacrifice their health due to financial hardship. We'll work with you to create a game plan that keeps your waiting room full and your practice thriving. And here's the best part. Offering affordable care not only benefits your patients, but also positively impacts your bottom line. So why wait? Join Power Health USA today and join the ranks of the most successful practices. Because when you put your patients first, everyone wins.
Okay, everybody, we are back and we're talking about why patients quit us sometimes secretly. They just walk away like ghosts. And we've unpacked that we've got to reset their expectations and why they come in with those ideas. I want to talk a little bit about, as we wrap up here, Troy, I want to talk a little bit about helping people understand that long-term mechanism of care. Because I hear a lot of doctors having a hard time. They do great getting patients all the way through their treatment plan, through their 18 visits or 20, whatever it is. But when they get to that final progress exam, patients are escaping away and they're having trouble making that jump to maintenance care. So I want to talk about that a little bit.
I think that is an important transition period. And I think there's some pretty simple solutions to that, quite frankly.
Mhm.
When you get a patient to the point of maintaining, if we've had the conversation several times already about them being that 84 Mustang GT, we get to the point now and I say, really what we're going to do at this point, and I put two caveats with this. What we're really going to do at this point is we're going to tune you up. Or I'll tell them sometimes when they jump off the table jokingly, hey, you're good for another 1,000 miles. And my patients laugh and go, okay, see you here in 3 weeks, doc, or whatever it may be. And they already know what they're doing. But I also tell them, I don't want you to have the expectation that you will never be in pain again, because sometimes what happens is they leave that treatment program feeling really good.
Mhm.
And then they go out to maintenance or wellness care and they have a small flare up, or maybe they have an even bigger flare up and they go, oh, that didn't work. I spent all that time and effort, and they quit care
Mhm.
quietly at that point because their expectation was they were never going to have pain again. So when I'm talking to a patient, I say, listen, you're probably going to have another episode or
Yeah.
2 or 3. Here's what we're trying to do. We're going to back care off, so we're not going to see you as often, but that gives your body the propensity to build up a little bit of restriction again. We're going to try to periodically put motion in your joints to keep you functional. But especially over the first year or 2 years that I'm doing this, you probably have a much greater chance to have a flare up. And it doesn't mean that you couldn't have a flare up 10 years from now. You can. So in other words, bottom line is wellness or maintenance care doesn't mean you're never going to have a problem again. It means that we're trying to keep you functional enough that you do, A, it's really easy to recover from again, and B, that we're not doing permanent damage over time that is going to create a situation where someday there is no help for you.
Yeah.
Pretty simple answers. And when I tell patients that and they understand that, they get it. And guess what they do? Because here's the last thing I tell them. While we're working with you on maintenance care, let's say that you're every 2 weeks right now. Okay. Now, Mike, when you're coming in and you're every 2 weeks, if you get 3 or 4 days out from your adjustment, and let's say you're out in the garden pulling weeds and something goes awry, don't say, I have an adjustment in another week and 4 days. Call us.
Yeah.
Let's
Get in
get
right
you
now.
in right now and let's address it real quick. And then we'll jump back out to that 2-week schedule. So my patients are very well versed in the fact that they don't want to sit and let that thing gel for the next 10 days and then come in and go, man, it just got worse and worse. And here I am because you told me 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So
And
we
patients
have
will do that.
they will. So you have to have an expectation of what they're supposed to do. But you notice what I created for the patient was an expectation, not that they were never going to be in pain again. It's going to happen. I almost guaranteed that it was going to happen at some
Mhm.
point, right? The expectation is that the long term is we're going to keep function there to try to keep you healthy and functional for the long haul for that marathon, not for the short and then just disappear. Now, some patients aren't going to buy into that. They're not going to do it. I have patients, and I'm not going to tell you that every patient I tell that strategy to utilizes that strategy.
No, but
Some
they
of them,
heard it.
they've heard it and they may utilize it the next time.
Yeah.
They may not utilize it this time. Sometimes I have patients because I say, okay, what do you want to do? We basically can just quit right here. I never see you again. Or we can look at every couple of weeks right now because I feel like that would be a good cadence of care for you. But if not, we could look out even a little bit farther. It's not really what I'd recommend for you, but I want to give you 3 options here. I want to give you no care, not the care I'd recommend, and really the care that I would recommend for you. What do you think we ought to do? I'd say 9 times out of 10, those patients are like, yeah. Or if they're not, what'll happen is they'll say, we're a little tight on money right now. We just had to put new tires on the car. Could we go out 3 instead of 2 right now? You know what? Hey, I work for you. I always say that too. I work for you.
Let's try it.
So let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we can always back it up. But I'm more than willing to do whatever you would like to do at this point, because I think the most important thing is that you're getting care.
Yep. And here's the bottom line, everybody. It's all about communication. It's all about keeping the ball in front of you, keeping the topic in front of the patient. And the topic is their care and their need for care, and how that helps not only improve their function, but we're going to stick with them for the long term to help them monitor their function and make sure that if something does arise, we're right there for them. So it really comes down to communication. And I hear a lot of docs say, oh, that's selling. I don't want to sell the patient. You're not selling the patient. This is about being a good doctor, affecting good, solid doctor authority, and telling patients what they need. Don't be afraid to tell patients what they need. And if part of what they need is long-term maintenance care, wellness care, whatever you call it, then tell them that. If what we don't want to do is diminish our communication so much that the patient just maintains their own expectations and they walk away, and you said it a minute ago, their pain comes back, and what do they think? Chiropractic care didn't work. Let's protect the profession. What we do has incredible value, but it's our responsibility collectively as doctors of chiropractic to protect it. And that's one way that we do.
Amen to that.
All right, everybody. Don't let patients quietly quit you. We just gave you a whole bunch of great jewels. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Tell your friends about us. Our podcast is growing like crazy. I love it. This has been so much fun for us. This is a project we started, I think a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we're having a ball with it, but we just appreciate getting out there and being able to communicate with you guys. And thank you. It's because of you guys that we're growing. So if you haven't done so, go to catsconsultants.com, check us out, see all the great things that we're doing to help clients have great experiences in their practice and really be able to build the lifestyle of their dreams through their practice. So go check us out. Make sure you check out Chiro Health USA. We appreciate them as one of our sponsors, and we will see you guys next time.
See you later. Okay.
Pat's Chiropractic Consultants, your partner in chiropractic success. We are dedicated with one-on-one guidance to bring you all your practice management needs. Let's supercharge your practice. Give us a call today